Hi, Lizzie here from Lizzy Curtis Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to make Norbert, which is just here. And that's what the pattern looks like when you download it from the website. So Norbert is a really good make because you could adapt it if you want to, and I'll talk to you about that as we make it. But actually it's the perfect gift for the man in your life, perhaps. I suppose it depends on what fabric you use, but it's very typical of a man sort of hold-all. It's a smaller make, and there's a reason for that, but of course, as I said, you could make it more personal to you, but perhaps enlarge it a bit, and again we'll talk about that in the video. So this is how we're going to put Norbert together. Now it's great because you've got a zip that goes all the way across the top, and we've done this several times now in my members group, so you should be getting to grips now with how to put these type of zips in. Little zip tabs on the end. Now I've used a white cotton or creamy cotton so you can see my stitching. Ideally when you make yours, you'll make yours with you know, matching thread, but one of the things I like to do is to show where things are in the pattern, and taking pictures with a matching thread you wouldn't be able to see a thing. So the idea is that obviously you can put toiletries in here. These are sort of fairly, I would say regular size, and you can put all your bits and bobs in there. I've got all sorts in here. Here we go. So the idea is that you've got Norbert there with the internal pocket, so you can pop things in there that maybe you want to keep separate. So it's actually attached to one side of the actual pouch itself. So you can perhaps put your medication in that pocket. Maybe you want to keep your toothbrush separate, I don't know, but it's an opportunity to keep things separate from the rest of the body of the pouch itself. It's a good size. There's no turning gaps as such. There is on the side, but you'd never see it. So when you look in the inside, it's incredibly neat and tidy. If I can only hold it up to you nicely. There we go. And it just looks like a neat project, and obviously you've got the zip there to help keep things secure if you want to. It's got gussets at the side, and it's made with one piece of fabric, one piece for the outer, one piece for the lining. Now obviously this video goes out to the general public, and I'm not going to give you the measurements for making this. This is not a free pattern. It's a free tutorial, but not a free pattern. I would appreciate it if you went to my website and downloaded the pattern. It's just a PDF download, so it can be downloaded anywhere in the world, so there's no sort of worries about where you are in the world. Whatever currency you use, your bank, your PayPal, that sort of thing, will translate it into your currency, so you mustn't worry about things like that. And also there's a converter on my website if you are at all curious. So yeah, so it's a really nice make. We're using foam interfacing, so it stands up nicely. It feels nice and soft. As I say, you could use a pretty little fabric if you're going to make it for a lady, and that's what we're doing today. But actually I had the men in mind, and for a Christmas gift, and fill with all the goodies that they like or not like. They can be fickle. Well, so can we. It's absolutely ideal for that, and it's just, I just love it. I just love it. It's something that I think you will be able to achieve easily. So as I say, all my members, my online members to my sewing group, all 580 of you, you'll have the measurements in the pattern, and your pattern obviously is free. For anybody else that's looking at this now and you're not one of my online members, then enjoy the tutorial, but please go and buy the pattern. I would very much appreciate it. Thank you. It's what keeps us going, basically. I'll put Norbert to one side. I might put him behind us so we can keep our eye on him. I'll put him up on my featherweight case. I don't know if you'll see him there. I don't know how high the camera is. Oh yes, not too bad. Right, okay. Let's get rid of my toiletries. Oops. There we go. Right, I'm going to try and follow the pattern, but you know, I'm pretty useless at stuff like that, so I tend to sort of be really good before we start, and then that's it. I just go off piece, which is fine. Okay, so now I haven't all I've done so far is draw out the pattern. I thought it was really important, especially my members, that you could see how, not how I do it, but more what it looks like when I've drawn it. Now, if we go on the overhead, I'm rather hoping we can kind of zoom into a section somewhere and you'll be able to see the drawn lines. So the whole thing is done on a fat quarter. So I've got the selvage here and I've got the kind of the centre cut line, if you like. So if there was another bit, that would be your half metre of fabric, or half yard if you're in the States. And it'll still fit. And in the pattern I give you a template on what all these measurements are, so don't be worried that you've just suddenly got to become an architect and work out all these drawings. It's so easy, and if you use, which I haven't got handy, but if you use a 12 by 12 inch ruler, you can get the ruler so it sits on the corners of all these lines and you can draw them very, very easily. While I've got my two fabrics together, I've also drawn out the pocket, because what I wanted to do with this was to actually cut all this pattern out with my scissors rather than using a rotary cutter. Some people don't like their rotary cutters, so I thought, oh well, we'll just use scissors. So everything has been drawn out. So this is the pocket here. So we've got a right side and a wrong side, sorry, a right side, which is our outer fabric, and I've got a gorgeous Liberty for the interior. And like I said, it's quite, let me get Norbert down again, because you can see that the lining does make a difference to how it looks, and it's really makes it sort of, you know, it's complementary. Although I've used a sort of solid block colour there, you obviously don't have to, and it makes quite a difference to your finished project. So let's pop him back up there. Okay. So yeah, so this is my outer, this is my lining. So all terribly posh actually. So yeah, so it's just a case of cutting out. So I've pinned my two layers together, right sides together. So if I have kind of deviated a little bit on my drawing, they will fit together when I come to stitch it, because I have put right sides together. The little zip tabs, which are just here, so I'm hoping you'll be able to see those. I have to try and get John to zoom in so you can see those. We only want those on a single layer, so I've just drawn them out, but I'll wait till the end of my cutting and I'll just take that layer away and cut those out on their own. So if I get my lovely big scissors, they are big but they're incredibly loose. And do you know, I have no idea how to tighten them. So because we've pinned it, they will stay together beautifully. I mean, crikey, you know, if it does wriggle a little bit, you're not to get too anxious about it, because, you know, we've got that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that can allow for a multitude of sins, let's say. So just enjoy the process of cutting out by hand. It's not very often we do that. We tend to rely these days very much on our rotary cutters. I thought this would be fun, something a little bit different. So as I said, this actual shape, the size of this, it fits on fat quarters, so you just need 2 fat quarters to make the outer and the lining. And you can see from what I've already drawn out that there is plenty of room to cut pockets, and obviously you could cut a pocket from this half as well, so you could have 2 pockets if you want, just to make it special to you. But if you want to make this bigger, I want you to look at the pattern and just add the appropriate amount. The actual width of it isn't too bad. You might want to perhaps add 1 inch or so, but whatever you add to like these sides here, so this measurement up here, these here, whatever you add here, let's say 1 inch, then you need to add to the sides as well 1 inch, and basically that's it. As I say, you can add to the width and it's not going to distort the pattern at all. Obviously you'd have to adjust the pocket. So when I talk about the width, it's this bit here. So if you could add 1 inch or 2 to this width here, but whatever you do here, you must do on these bits here. You can make these wider, that's no problem, but it's just this bit and this bit that you've got to keep the same. When I say the same, I mean if you add an inch, you add an inch to both. They're already not the same size, so don't measure them and think, well, if I add an inch to this, it's not going to work. It will work. There's already a difference in the measurement, and there's a reason for that as well. Of course there is. So there's our little zip tabs, so I'll just pop them there. And this is then our actual whole thing cut out. I mean, obviously we've got the pockets to do and the zip tabs, and we've got the foam interfacing as well. So let's just pop that to one side and let's cut out the pocket. The first thing we're going to do is make the pocket up, so let's get it cut out. Now normally when I make these videos for you, for my members, I tend to sort of have an awful lot of prep done beforehand, just so we can keep it within the hour, because that's much more user friendly if you've got just an hour to watch. But with this one I thought, well, it's quite a nice easy make, it's quite a quick make, so I thought, right, let's just do the whole thing. Maybe some of the stitching I might get John to trim out, but we'll see. Anyway, there's my pocket. So there's two layers, got inside, outside, lining, outer. So we'll just take the lining away, and this is my outer fabric for my zip tabs. So let's just cut those. I mean, obviously you could use your rulers and your rotary cutters. I just thought this would be fun, as you do. Now these zip tabs actually go on the end of the zip, so you want to be really mindful of your seams when you stitch these together, and as we go through you'll see what I mean about that. I want you to do a scant 1/4 inch on these, but I'll try to remember to tell you that as I get to that point. So there we are. So everything is cut out bar the foam. So the foam is slightly different. So let's just put the zip tabs. In fact, I'm going to pin them to my mat so I don't lose them. Things have a tendency to disappear. Right, take the pins out of my lining and outer of my pocket, and I've got some lightweight interfacing to go on the wrong side of the outer piece. To be honest, it doesn't really matter whether it's the outer or the inner, to be honest, because they sit together, but we'll just stick to the plan. So let's plug my iron in. I need to get a new iron. This is permanently on now, which is not a good thing. Right, so while we're waiting for the iron to heat up, the foam. Now I'm going to hold this up. Yes, you can just about see it. So the foam, what's happened there is I've sort of kind of jumped ahead a bit. So what I want you to do, if we go on the overhead again, so you can see the shape now, I want you to take the pieces that you just cut out of the main bag, let's say, and I want you to place it on your foam interfacing, and what I want you to do is use that as your template, and then it will fit your actual cutting out. So just draw around this whole thing on your foam. This is an sewing bosal, but it can be whatever you want it to be. You can do double-sided iron-on or single-sided. At the moment I'm preferring sewing. There's lots of reasons for that. However, let's get cracking. Now we have drawn to the absolute outside edge of our piece. I want you to cut about 3/8 of an inch in. Now if you want to, if I can find my pen, I'm going to do this sort of freestyle, but I want you to go round perhaps and draw a second line. You could use a biro, you don't have to use a heat erasable, and you could draw a second line inside that first. I mean, this is really, I'm trying to go fast on this, on the inside of your your drawer. I'm just laughing because I've gone right off piece there. Because we don't really want all of this in the seams, we really don't. Obviously, because this is a sew-in, you'll think, oh, what's the point of that, because we need to sew it in. Well, I'm going to use 505 to hold it down, which is kind of a temporary, but also we are going to be stitching this. We've got the pocket to stitch on, we've got the zips to do, and all of those things, top stitching, etc, 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 and that alone will be enough to hold it in place. I don't think you need to get uber excited about any of that. So you can see that I've drawn that second line, so all we're going to do is just cut. Now obviously I'd like you to measure, I'm just sort of kind of going for it, and you're going to cut on that. I don't want it to be 1/4 inch. There's nothing trickier than trying to stitch close to a 1/4 inch away foam interfacing, if you like. It is a little tricky. To give yourself a little bit of leeway, 3/8 of an inch is good, and it sits. I think it sits better on your seams. If you agree, that's great. If you think not, and there'll be some that think not, then cut it to what you think you should cut it to. That way everybody's happy and I don't get a load of complaints. Which I do. Oh dear me. Alright, so you can see how ever so easy this stuff is to cut. To be honest, it stitches beautifully as well, but we are going to be stitching multiple layers together, and it just helps not to have all this bulk in the seams. Your machines, whatever your machine you've got, should be able to take these layers absolutely fine. This foam squidges down to almost nothing when you're stitching, so yeah, why not, you know. Let's pop those back. So I'm going to get some 505, which is just outside of my reach, and I'm going to stick this down on the I'm going to stitch it down on the outer piece. So I'm going to stick it down on the outer piece of my bag. I'll be back in a second. So I'm just going to take the pins out of my layers. These will go back in, so it keeps everything really well put together. So it's the outer piece that I want to put my foam onto. So let's just lay that down on my desk, and I'm going to get my 505. I'm going to spray this just a little bit, just to one side. I'm not going to do it that way because the dog's lying on the floor. Obviously you might want to protect your floor, your carpet, you know, anything that you've got there, if that's what you're going to do. I'm not going to spray it over my desk because the spray obviously will then start sticking to everything that I do in the next half an hour. So now what I'm going to do is just place this over the top. So if you line up the bottom, let's see how we get on. Now obviously this has only had a very light spray just to hold everything in place, which is exactly how I want it to be. Okay, that's not too bad. So you can see I get a nice sort of edge, if you like, for where I'm going to stitch. I've been doing Christmassy things. I've got tinsely bits everywhere, so if you can see sparkle, that's what it is. Okay, so we can put that to one side. Might give it a little iron. Ironing actually sets the glue, even if you're just sort of ironing it so it's nice and flat, but it also helps to set the glue, so which is quite nice. So let's pop that to one side. Let's go back to our pocket then, because that's the main thing we're trying to do at the moment. So I'm going to put the soft interfacing. I'm using a G700. There's lots of interfacings that you can use, but it's a soft one you want. You don't want anything too bulky, but something that's just going to make your pocket a little bit more substantial than if it didn't have any interfacing. So the other thing you could do is to use a third layer of fabric. So if you've got some fabric that you're not that keen on, that's not going to show through, and otherwise not too dark or light, then use another layer of fabric. Why not? Instead of interfacing, that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so there's our pocket with the stabiliser on. So now what we're going to do is right sides together, and we'll just give that a little pin just to hold it all in place. And because this has all been hand cut, you might have little wrinkly bits. You know, it's never going to be, well, I'm going to say it's never going to be absolutely perfect, but please prove me wrong. Okay, so let's just bring in the machine. Okay, that's great. So we're going to stitch along the 2 long edges. 1/4 inch seam allowance. No need to back stitch, and obviously don't go over your pins. Okay. And along the bottom, so the 2 long edges, you're stitching the lining and the outer right sides together. Good. Turn them through so you've got the outside facing out, and we'll just give those seams a little press. So let's get the iron in on the little ironing mat. So open up your seams first. This is not patchwork, you don't have to set your seams. I mean, you do if you really want to. And then just fold those over really nice and neatly. You don't really want the lining to show, so try and sort of roll those seams so you're seeing the outer more than you're seeing the lining, if you can. So make sure they sit flat. And use some best press or sew flat to keep them nice and flat. That's, oh, that Liberty is just, it's far too delicious. Okay, so on one of these long sides we're going to top stitch, just one of them. You can increase your stitch length to 3 for top stitching. I'll just keep going as I am, but that is always an option. Okay. So there's our pocket top stitched, and that is the top of our pocket. Okay, so next stage is to get hold of your lining of your outer piece, and then what you're going to do is grab your heat erasable and a ruler, and you're going to just choose one side, and you're going to measure, draw a line from corner to corner. So you can see there now I've got a lovely line going right across from corner to corner, and that's where we put our pockets. So what I want you to remember is the top stitch part we've just done goes up the top, and this goes on the seam just here. And when we stitch these layers together, the corner will actually end up 1/4 inch in, which is great because that then just sits a little bit more proud. Okay. So just pin these in place. Okay, so what we're going to do is that we're going to baste down here. I'm going to use my regular stitch, and then I'm going to top stitch along the bottom to secure it to my lining, and then I'm going to baste all the way up that seam. So let's bring the machine in. So you're doing about 1/8 of an inch, and all of this bottom piece here can be pinned if you want to, but you've got that line that you've drawn to guide you, so you should be fine. And then up the other side. If you want to, you can change to a longer stitch, maybe a length of 4, especially because you're basting, but you know, it takes more time. You might as well stitch with the length that you've got set up. So there is our pocket in place. It looks great, and you can give it a press if you want to, but you can see how useful that's going to be. Now we've got our outer with our foam on, we've got our lining with our pocket in. All we need to do now is pop the two together. So this is where we get our pins, and we really pin it well. You might want to use clips, but I'm just going to stick with pins. In fact, the pin head should really always face out, so I shall do that because it does make it easier. But don't forget, we're going through all of these layers. So nice strong pins to go through. I've got some bent pins here, so we can use those. Just make sure it all lines up. And because we cut these pieces out right sides together, as I say, if you have done some wonky cutting, it won't matter. Sorry, flipping this around. It won't matter because it will match regardless, because you're putting these back right sides together. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Right, one more corner. Here we go. Just try and make sure they stay lined up. It does help, but there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch all the way around this piece, leave a turning gap here, and what you could do is either put a couple of pins, or we can just do a couple of marks to suggest that's where we stop and start. So start here, and then we start there, go all the way around and stop here. Okay, nice and easy, really nice and easy. Okay, so we are doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance regardless of what your foam looks like. If you can stick to that, it's sometimes not always easy to stick to that. If you've got a 1/4 inch foot, or you've got some tape on your machine like I always use, then you'll be fine. And don't forget, you're not stitching the foam down, so when you come to turn this through, you might have to push the foam back in. I mean, if you wanted to, you could quilt it, you could cross hatch it and hold it all together, or just put stripes on it, so you're catching the foam. But quite honestly, it's going to pretty much stay put. I can't think that it would ever shift. Maybe if you washed it, it might shift. But I mean, seriously, how often do we wash our toiletry bags? Maybe once a year. Should I admit to that? Okay. Ooh, let's put the foot down. Do one more stitch there. Oh, I just cut my threads. Hold on. Oh dear. Okay. So we're nearly around. Okay, so we're back to where we started, but we've left a turning gap. Okay, super. So now I think what I want you to do is to go around and trim your corners. So just chop straight across your corners. If you want to take a bit more off, then please do. I want you to go into your corners where appropriate, and maybe take some fabric away on those corners as well. Oh, and I meant to say, for your turning gap, if you could make it the side that doesn't have the pocket, that would be much easier for you, much easier. You know, when you come to stitch it, it's just a reminder to myself that that's what I should have done. But it'll be fine. Right, so I'm just taking some of that bulk away from the inner corners. Yeah, I think it's probably more important there than the outer. And just go round and snip all those. So take some bulk away. Good, that's gone all the way around now. Lovely. So now we can turn through. Like I said, if you want to, you could add some more spray to these. I mean, this isn't too bad, just to hold it in place. I bet they're going to shift anyway, I think. I remember when I turned the other one, when I turned the other one through, I had to re-stick a few bits or push them in. I think they'll be fine. There we go. Not too much. It can come through onto your fabric. Okay, so we're going to turn it through. So this might take a moment. I'll just get a turning tool ready. So if you can get your hand in there, that'll be good. Push it through. Okay, so once you've turned it through, give it a really good press, and you'll see I've got a load of clips coming down the side of my pouch there, and that's actually, I've glued that seam together. I don't want to top stitch it because we're going to top stitch it when we put our sides on, so I've kind of just put a glue there. It's a basting glue. The one I use is from Roxanne, but you can use any brand that's suitable to you. I'm just a regular fabric glue, so I don't get it everywhere because some of these glues completely pour out, don't they? So I've just put my clips there just to hold it together while it sets. In the meantime, it's time to actually put our zips in. So I've got to put the zip on this side and this side, so these two sides here. Now, in my opinion, it's easier to split the zip so you don't have a zip slider on it. We can take the zip slider off, and we can obviously, we're going to pop it back later on. It's easier then to just put one on one side like that, so the right side of your zip is facing up, the right side of your fabric is facing up. Use quilted tape if you want to hold that down, and then we're just going to literally top stitch it in place, and then the same for the other side. So again, the right side facing us of the zip's teeth is facing us here, and the right side of our fabric is facing us there. Now, the other thing I want you to consider is when we flip this over, you're going to see the whole of the zipper tape going across your pouch there. Now, this is where I said to you earlier about using a matching thread. So in this case, it would be red. Obviously, I'm still going to be keeping to my cream because it's easier. But then you've got the edge of the tape to contend with. Now, I used a fabric glue again just to hold that tape down flat, but you could do a slip stitch just to make sure that that does lay nice and flat once you've stitched it and once you've top stitched it. So that's just another sort of aspect to putting this bag together. So what I've already done is I've marked the centre of both seams, so the centres there and there of both, and I've also marked the centre of my zips, so I know I can line those up nicely with my marks I've already made. So we'll do one at a time. and all I'm going to do is use a clip just to hold that there, so that then I know that's in the centre. We've got enough either end to play around with putting the zip slider on and making this slightly smaller if we need to. We're going to add our tabs on there, but that's the last job we do. So let's pop this under the machine. We're just going to top stitch, as I say. And actually you could hand stitch this. I think I'm going to take my clips out now. That should have set quite nicely. Doesn't take long really, it's just really while the glue is wet, and of course you could dry it with your iron. So use your zipper foot. Make sure that at the beginning of where you stitch is really secure, so a nice little bit of a back stitch going on right at the beginning and the end, and then just hold it nicely, get it lined up, clip it, pin it, quilter's tape, anything that's going to help you put this in nice and straight. And it's at this point that you'll probably get the foam, you'll be stitching the foam down as well as the fabric. So just coming up to the end here, and a nice strong back stitch to finish. So if I hold that up, you can see what that looks like, you can see what you're aiming for. And as I said as well, when we look at this part of it, you can see that I've got my tape showing, which I have no issues with, but you could just slip stitch that down if you want to, or again you could use a fabric glue just to make sure that it stays flat. You could put a nice braid or ribbon across there as well, or a bias tape, anything that you think is going to enhance what you've done, but quite honestly it's the inside of the bag, so it's just a case of going with it. So let's pop the second half onto our bag, just clip it in the middle as we did before, nice strong back stitch to start, and then again all the way along just as we did before. So try to keep both sides the same, so have something in your mind of what that looks like. So I suppose I've got about 2mm from the zip teeth to the edge of my seam. So a nice strong back stitch again, and that's hopefully what it'll look like. And again we've got it on the back as well, so again we might need to sort of glue that down and keep it neat. So there we are, so that's our zip in place, which I'm very happy about. It looks really lovely. So now all we've got to do is to put our sides up. Now again you could, I'll get some clips, you could get some clips here and clip these together. Now what I suggest you do is start from the top and work your way down. So let's have a look on the overhead. So fold your side panel up, and that's how it should sit, and you should be a little bit away from the end of your zip. Let me just trim those ends because that's going to irritate me. So you should have a little sort of, you just overlap the end of the zip tape, but you should have a gap here. There shouldn't, this edge here, this gusset should not be coming up to the edge of the zip. It wouldn't work very well. So you can pop a clip in there, and that's kind of like your benchmark. So when you come to do this other side, when you turn it around, I want you to bring it up, and I want you to again have a look at it, make sure that it's equal the other side. And it's much easier to start from the top to make sure those are perfect than to start from the bottom and work up. Otherwise it's possible you'll end up with them just slightly different. Okay, so we're going to start on one and then we'll do all four. So I won't clip that second one, it's just there's no point, I'll keep it out the way. So like I said, you're going to go from the top down, so just make sure everything is lined up. You might want to, I'm going to have to do it from the right side of the bag. You just want to make sure you catch that top in, which I have, and you're probably stitching about 1/8 of an inch. And again, you're just making sure that And actually you might want to increase your stitch length now because you're going through foam as well as all the fabric. That helps. So just make sure your edges are sitting together. So again, you might want to put a clip in there to hold them. There we go. So that's the first one done. You can see what that looks like. And then we're just going to flip it over and we're going to stitch the other one. So because I can see where I started, I know where to position this piece here to the zip. So I can just move it up slightly. A nice back stitch again. This is the side that I glued. And you could slip stitch that turning gap closed. Obviously you can. And lengthening your stitch is ideal at this point. So that's our second side done. You can see now what it looks like. Got that lovely gusset, nice sort of width, if you like, so sort of a 2-inch gusset now. Okay, so we're going to do exactly the same the other side. So bring up your gussets to the top. So don't forget, you look at the other side and see where you started and try to get those equal to the position of your stitching, the edge of the zip tape, and where you place it on here. So you're starting from the top and coming down. So if you want to, place it in where it needs to be and then pop a clip in or a pin just to hold it there, not right where you're going to start stitching, but 1.5 inches or so down, and then pop that under your machine. Make sure your edges are still lined up nicely. Nice back stitch. Try and keep everything as neat as you can because a lot of this is going to be seen. So again, line up your edges about 1/8 inch, no bigger really, try to keep to that. All the way down to the bottom. Don't forget to increase your stitch length to at least 3 because we're going through all of those layers. And trim your threads. Then there we are, so you can see this one is now attached to here. So we're just going to take that edge, bring it across, start from the top, make sure it's the same as the other side, and then start stitching. Nice strong back stitch. And obviously all of this can be pinned. Your walking foot will help you with all of this project. So a few top tips. You can use a iron-on, like a fusible interfacing, a foam interfacing. You could use wadding, just make sure it is well adhered before you turn through. You could use quilter's tape to help you put the zip in. You can increase your stitch length to help you go through the layers. So lots of different things and tips and techniques that you can use to create your pouch. So there is almost it finished. We've just now got to do the tabs on the end. We've got to put the zips slider on first. Let's do that. So you want to try and make sure that when you put the zip slider on that your edges of your bag, if you can have a look on the overhead there, I'll bring it forward a bit, the edges of your bag actually line up. So really you want the start of your zip to be the same. It gives you a good head start. And then I'm just going to snip away just slightly less than 1/4 inch. This is how I do it. There's lots of different ways of putting zip sliders in, and I'm sure you do it the way that you're used to, and then you'll be able to do it. So you're sliding the first half on. The first half is always the easiest. There we go. And I go just beyond the edge of my zip tape. Take it down a bit more, not much. And then I'm going to pop the other side in. And you might find it easier if you roll that zipper teeth in and then just get hold of the ends and pull. Sometimes it's easier to have it away from you, so this way, and then pop it together. You'll find your way of being able to do it really nicely. So there's our zip side are on. What we need to make sure is both ends are the same. So you might, because obviously we put these in, you want to make sure that you have got them still equal, and to be honest it doesn't really matter at this stage. So we've got about 2 inches on that end. Let's make sure that this end is 2 inches. Get my tape measure in. Yeah, they're both 2 inches. That just needs trimming, so let's just trim that. There we go. And then we're just going to put our zip tab in. So with our zip tabs, let's get on the overhead so we can see what we're doing. Steady easy. The only thing I would say to you is just mind your seam allowances. So you've cut your 2 pieces, give them a little iron, fold over each end about 1/4 inch. I mean, don't measure it, but you'll be able to eyeball that. Give it a really good crease, so both ends 1/4 inch thereabouts, but do make them equal, both tabs if you can. If you can't, well, it becomes a unique design. So fold these over, there we go, give them a nice press, and then bring your right sides together. I don't want you to press it, but I want you to make sure, I'll just give it a little dab there, just make sure that they stay together. A clip or a pin is good, whichever is easiest. And let's just put, so you're putting the folds together as best you can. Okay, let's pop the iron away. And what you're doing is that you're stitching down the 2 sides from the folded edge here down to the fold. So I want you to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I want you to make it a scant 1/4 inch. Okay, so I'm drawing it on so you can see, but you might want to do this anyway. So you're stitching the folds down, you're not opening those up, and you're just doing yourself a line. And like I say, it wants to be scant, so if you can remember that, that will be good. They've got to fit over the end of the zips, and any shorter or any smaller you might have difficulty. So starting from the folded edge, I'm going to take my pins out. Just make sure that those 2 layers stay together. So I'm going to pop my needle down and just make sure that the 2 folded edges stay on top of each other. Back stitch, I'm starting a good stitch and a half away from those folded edges, and then I can, assuming you've got those lined up nicely, you can start from the other side so you can see where you've drawn, and come up to your folded edges here and just make sure that they stay as neat as you can together. And a nice little back stitch just to secure them so they look like that. So do the same again. So pop them under the needle. You might want to put your needle down in them first. Pop your foot down. Start a wee bit away, so I will say about 1.5 stitches, just so you don't, so that fabric doesn't go into your machine. You know, sometimes it can be not sucked in, but you know what I'm saying. It can go down the hole if you're not careful, because it's only a little piece of fabric. Okay, so there's our 2 tabs. So all we need to do now is just to turn those through, give them a little press, and then we can stitch them onto the ends of our zip. So I'll just trim the threads at the top seam there. There we go. And we'll just, I'm going to get my hemostats. So I just pop those in. Come on. That's it. Just grab hold of that fabric and just tease it through. Try and get those points out if you can. Again, just pop that in the middle, grab hold and pull through. corners out nicely. And then it's just a case really of making sure that you've got no threads sort of hanging out and showing, otherwise it can look a bit ugly. Just make sure that those seams are sitting nicely inside. And get them rolled just to make sure that they're out. Okay, so just give this a little trim. Okay, those are our zip tabs. Now they should fit nicely over the end of your zip, and you want to just poke them in about 1/4 inch. So if you get your zip tab, get your zip and just wriggle them on. There we go. So I can get a clip just to hold that, and you can see I've got bits all over the place here today. You can see that that fits nicely on there. And then on this end I'm just going to bring the zip up, make sure that my zip ends do fit nicely. Again, I'm just taking this end. Now you could obviously pop a little stitch in there so it holds them together, but if you wriggle that in, that's it, they will sit together quite naturally. And then put a clip in and that holds it together really well. You can see that both ends now are ready for stitching. And that's it, that'll be our Norbert made. Great name, isn't it? Very strong name. Okay, so again, it's a little awkward for you to see, but I'm just going to pop it under my machine. I can squidge it down. Now I'm going to put my needle in. Let me just take that away so you can see. So I'm going to pop my needle in a little way away from the edge. Let's see if I can, don't know if I can move that so you can see better. If I did that, no, it's not going to work. Let me do it like that. So you can see my needle is, there's the edge of my zipper tape, and my needle is probably near 1/4 inch in. I'm going to start there and stitch back, and that makes sure that everything stays nice and neatly in place. Okay, take my clip away. So if I can squidge it down and get even more so you can see. Go up to the end, and then obviously you can back stitch. So apart from the threads, you can see how that looks. Okay, so a few little loose ends we can just tidy away, and then we'll do the same the other end. So I can just pop that under my machine, just make sure it's straight. That looks a bit wriggly at the minute. I'm going to take my zip slider out of the way. Like I say, you could use your quilter's tape if you want to hold it down, or you can hand stitch the zip together to make sure that the ends stay together. Anything to make it easier for yourself. Okay, so there's the other end in place. Just about see it there. Just trim the threads. Of course you could hand stitch these, I didn't even think of that. So there we are, so that is our Norbert made. I think it looks absolutely great. Perhaps could do with another little press to make sure that it sits nicely, because obviously the zip needs a press as well. So you might want to pop that under the iron. And of course you could finish off the zip ends here, the zip tape, with perhaps a hand stitch or just a basting glue just to hold those down. But other than that, you've got a really lovely roomy pouch with this pocket here to keep all perhaps pills and potions separately from the rest of your toiletries. That's what I'm thinking in my head, that it's a toiletry bag. And you've got a pretty little make. There we are. So another lovely little Norbert more female Norbert. And then we've got the other one here, which is our original one. There we are, we have two. So I hope you liked the tutorial. I hope you found it useful. Maybe you picked up some little tips in there that you can use for your own sewing. But do pop along to my website and you'll see the pattern there straight away. It'll and the video, of course, to help you make it. And to my members, obviously it's free. So well done you. So there's Norbert. I hope you make loads.